Angela Daniels with the Panasonic Foundation. You are tuned in to episode 2 of our leadership series, where the conversations are centered around equity. Today, we're joined by our former chairman, Milton Chen. Hi, Milton.
Good to see you, Angela.
So I'm so excited to talk to you today because in episode 1, we talked with our former executive director, the founder, Sophie Sa, and she gave us this great history lesson on how the mission of the foundation was created to address race and equity in our education system in the United States. So I'm looking forward to talking to you today to learn more about the evolution of that work and how your expertise brought this new age approach. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right, so when Panasonic relocated its North American headquarters to Newark about 6 or 7 years ago, how did that evolve the work of the foundation?
It really started the company and the foundation thinking about the significance of this move to Newark. Here you have an urban city that has meant so much in the history of the United States, in the history of racial equity in the United States. And that started us thinking about, could we be doing more to support the community in Newark and support the young people especially, taking our mission of serving young people and our mission of equity, as you mentioned, but beginning to focus more on what could be done in Newark. So that started us thinking about working with the school district, working with other partners, other nonprofits and foundations in Newark, and a closer connection to the work of the company as well.
So I know a lot of cash resources were involved, but outside of cash resources, what were some forms or other forms of philanthropic support you saw happening during that time?
What became important during those conversations between Panasonic North America and the Panasonic Foundation was this new interest on the part of the company in an employee volunteer program, in having employees donate their time for which they would be paid, and the many ways in which the employee base of P&A could be of service, especially right there beginning in Newark. So that was the impetus towards a closer connection to the work of the corporate social responsibility of the company, and us beginning as a foundation to also begin to target more of our own resources towards the city of Newark.
So when we talk about the future of work, specifically funneling the talent pipeline to Panasonic, can you explain the value in exposing students to STEAM education earlier in their academic careers?
Making STEAM more relevant to the modern day needs of students and the workforce, as you mentioned, is a real challenge for schools. Their curriculum tends to be set, so finding ways to incorporate what happens in the modern day workforce when it comes to science and engineering has always been a challenge to schools, and Panasonic has so many resources to bring students into the world of automotive, avionics, the future of energy generally, and the future of transportation. So we saw that as a valuable asset of the company that we wanted to have a closer partnership with in terms of the work of our foundation. And that's something that's been proven to be very beneficial to the students there, to have exposure to a modern company and a company that's on the cutting edge in so many different fields.
I love that you talk about that exposure. For me, I can honestly say that the saying, you can't be what you can't see, definitely rings true. When the film Hidden Figures came out, I was like, I could be a Black scientist, like kicking butt at NASA. So you also bring a lot of expertise in working with Sesame Street and the George Lucas Foundation. How have those organizations leveraged innovations in media, specifically television and media, to help address the opportunity gap?
Both of those organizations that I've worked at, Sesame Workshop there in New York City and the George Lucas Educational Foundation here in the Bay Area, have used media to tell stories, especially stories about educational innovation. If you look at Sesame Street, if you can imagine 50 years ago, it was the first time that young children saw children who looked like them on television in the late 1960s, early 70s. It was the first time that Spanish, for instance, was spoken on a children's television program. We've heard so many stories about children who are now adults and parents themselves saying this was the beginning of their own education, to say that they could do more, they can learn more, and they're now transmitting that message to their children. The George Lucas Educational Foundation, of course, founded by the filmmaker, uses film and documentary films to capture innovations in classrooms, such as project-based learning. The modern workforce is organized around projects, not around textbooks. So we show how project-based learning in schools happens, of the sort that's happening with Panasonic Foundation there in Newark.
I love that. Okay, so given your tenure as chairman with the Panasonic Foundation, serving for a little over a decade, what were some highlights that you think were the best things you experienced?
I'll point to one highlight, which came out of a site visit that we did there in Newark with our board to an organization called Students to Science. They had hosted a visit from Panasonic North America and our foundation for the staff. This is an organization that does very much what we've been discussing. It puts scientists and engineers in touch with students for modern day scientific lessons. They have labs there. They also have a distance learning program where the scientists, the engineers, the teachers can transmit their lessons and their experiences over the internet to students around the country and even around the world. So when we saw this, we gave them a lot of credit for coming up with this solution for STEM learning for Newark students and students in the surrounding districts there in New Jersey. And that became the focus of a major grant from the foundation.
Okay, so what I want to hear from you is, I guess, some nuggets of wisdom. What are some, or what is some advice you would give future chairmen, board members, or other leaders coming into this space doing this type of work?
We're at a real inflection point as we sit here having this virtual conversation in 2020. There's no question that the crises that our country is facing, the crises that our world is facing, this pandemic that we're in, this continuing crisis around racial equity in the United States. There's a lot more that we could do as nonprofit organizations, as foundations. It's time for all of us to begin to learn more about the issues, to delve more deeply, and to begin to come up with more innovative solutions. Panasonic as a company is known for very innovative solutions. We need to apply some of that same thinking to the work of our foundation and the work of our partnerships with nonprofits moving forward.
Okay, so our last few questions, it's going to be something new. Rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Through this leadership series, we also want to get to know the personalities of the leaders that we're speaking with. So you have no time to think, you just rapidly answer. Got it?
I'll try.
Big Bird or Elmo?
Having a long history with Sesame Street, I'd have to say Big Bird, that 8-foot-tall canary.
Okay, respect. Luke Skywalker or Darth Vader?
Well, of course, Luke Skywalker, but want to acknowledge the darker side of all of us in Darth Vader.
Tupac or Shakespeare?
Shakespeare, of course.
What's the last book you read?
Well, a last book I've read is a book called Last Boat Out of Shanghai by Helen Zia. It's a new book out the past year. It talks about what was happening in China after World War II, leading into the Communist Revolution and takeover in 1949. So The Last Boat Out of Shanghai is a story of young people who are getting on that boat, trying to move away from the revolution. And in fact, as it turns out, my own mother was a young person in Hong Kong who got on that very same boat on a different voyage and was able to come to the United States on that very same boat that was leaving Shanghai.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it's interesting how you can make connections in your own lives and your family's lives to important events in history.
Yeah. Okay, so for our last one, the best advice you've ever received.
I would say the best advice I've ever received is to say yes to when something offers up itself or an opportunity. Instead of coming up with reasons why you don't want to do that, try to find reasons why you can do that. I think oftentimes we have a little self-critic that tells ourselves, well, that doesn't make any sense, or I don't want to try something new or do something that I haven't done before. But to try to say yes to more opportunities and experiences, I think that's very valuable advice for young people, but also for ourselves as adults.
I love that. Okay, I'm going to take that with me after this. Well, thank you so much, Milton, for joining us in episode 2 of our leadership series. If you would like to learn more about the Panasonic Foundation, you can follow us on Instagram at Panasonic Foundation and Twitter at Panasonic FTN. Have a great day, Milton.
Thank you, Angela.
Thanks for watching.